Oh, this is about the jab, but this is about life. The sciences, boxing, martial arts, and wrestling, they are grouped by the identity of space slash existence itself, where and how it shows us the value of itself being a hyper additional nature, where the sciences appear not to have a share an identity but sharing one anyway. Just like we appear not to share an identity with other species' bodies, even insects, but we do share one anyway. We have quality aspects in nature distinct from them, but also non distinct and simultaneously with them, but also hyper simultaneously with them, per what is not us or them, per what is demonstrated. Even greater and more finite identity of value slash value progression. Just as your complete identity is simultaneously greater and more finite than the identity of the hair on your head or of the tip of your fingernail. Has a semi-nature relationship to your complete identity. Each complete identity has a semi-nature relationship to the identity of all things at once. This is one of the reasons why it is more probable and practical that to theorize, let alone to convict. I forgot what I was going to say. Ron just distracted me because he brought up police and he's obstructing justice and rolls with predicate acts against me that Weathersfield police have digitally with other police departments and judges and prosecutors involved with private locations and private homes and crime scenes. Names that connected, wire crime acts, methods, they're forging names, switching names. This is Joshua Julian on Facebook page of a principal child abuser. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, federal evidence is crimes. Rolls with a principal child abuser before as one of the names who forced that. Right on the Facebook page. Rolls with juxtaposed distinct natures of organized crime used consciously. Retired police chiefs, one named Cintron, is also involved with these people. I don't know what I like Ron Adams, who it might be a fake identity of one of the people recorded. There are people that went to campuses I went and next who rolls with names next to all the campuses I went, who planted evidences together, fake ties and natures of ties to me. Other people take pictures. I caught way worse than just the isolated crimes. So they go, oh, well, the punishment will be less, so we just make it this. That's because sometimes it's the courts, and increasingly at the same time, to an extent too, the difference of all sides of criminal and civil cases, the news, or the interbranch locations, or the intelligence tied to them, like prisons, or the state offices, like the state corrections offices and the state judicial offices, increasingly with names involved with insidious uses of the location and of the ones next to it, as names involved intercampuses, putting fake things in databases and directed to it. But even when they're directed to it by others, they're leaving out how they had roles with predicate acts with facts at each campus, connected for them by others. This is a continued outcome /S, where and how it is also, in other words, I shouldn't have to tell about these things. I give up my secrets about what I want to write about, even artistically. Like, for example, but I do it because there is no one at the helm. And if they say that, any individual leader, people say, oh, we have to pretend integrity for things like that. The same way this preaching method knew before founders were even born. It had such crazy laws and had uses of the difference of that, or the differences of the work criminal enterprises or the private ones, only capable of being self-valued. And the hundreds of countries shared here and there tactical terror from how nature has us as individuals, of individual species body, of individuals, with all group differences and demonstration that they are being generated by the hyper difference to the extent of it, to the extent we could discern of it, its identity of relationship, wherever, to the extent we could discern of it, it comes also with its identity, its complete identity of relationship to itself. Increasing, inseparable from that, and simultaneously equally increasing its value, and simultaneously the value of that increasing, and we can discern this. But it requires a quality of fact treatment nature, for example, that is not entertaining having been entertained, let alone while entertaining at the same time. Quality aspects of fact treatment nature. And speculation and future prospectus, or perspective, as systems tactically ulterior from its own. See, I can't afford theory, let alone conviction, proper regarding such things, regarding the past, the active present, or the progressive future, that like the seasons. We know the seasons are value. We know their value to come to an extent, because nature shows us that. It shows us there's another identity of time too that we know is there, that is beyond that we don't know. But we know it's also an identity of relativity here now. It's value here now. But we can know more about that and what came first. See, nature itself shows us to appreciate indigenous difference everywhere it is, but not through these fake systems. Connecticut and interstates, the intelligence community has roles with the Native Americans too. Communicating and having communicated for our for our founders, which are semi-Native Americans. Nature itself shows us this. That's why see president/chief. That alone shows us. And that alone, simultaneously, we know there was a breaching method sustained against them since before America's founders were born, and using all natural difference of our species volume science, like with black and white being the colors that are the ones that have us as the same color eyes at the same time, while there are exceptions in exception nature with the other part of our eyes. See, the ancients appreciated this before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced and forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to self-value rules with theories used instead to measure and maintain self roles with use /s too of self-value. Criminally foreign influence, fact, treatment, nature, quality aspects in nature, and uses of the names of the sciences. In other words, legal names have worse than criminal incompetence. When they blame things on prejudice, that nature itself obligates them to blame on the breaching method, the predicate action with facts, the delivery system method. The intelligence community recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed how they pretend other, but they also record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They lie and change what people say. And they have collusions with courts doing this. And because they have rules of predicate acts with facts, because they had their education at every campus is A through Z. The difference between them too was is used consciously by this breaching method assigned and then employed further natures of industries and roles with jobs and titles, incapable of defending that and of affording discern the Constitution unabridged in its identity of relativity to and as the value of why we have an amendment that says we have rights that are too numerous to list. In other words, relative to criminally foreign influence and tactically delusions raw. Convictions by the syntax at all those locations where we hear that names of bodies of the law speaking. It is inseparable from where and from how other things, others, ourselves are being communicated. For James Madison, and for George Washington regarding their torture method against themselves, which was simultaneously an extortion method slash S against themselves, which was simultaneously a fact treatment nature slavery method slash S against bodies A through Z of the human species value nature system. Now, as economies, even in defense of themselves, we're self-valued, including especially in many ways syntactically. In other words, there are remote uses of quality aspects in nature to that, as collusion slash S with predicate acts with facts methods, nature of identity theft, fraud, slanders methods, and fake motivations for it, roles. And they come up years later per application slash S, shown self-valued needs like these natures of industries that care for all the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures that the breaching method caused originally instill. That the breaching method originally instilled maintains blamed on other things, others, ourselves too. Even when correctly, exactly as collusions with itself. In other words, it's not by accident no one black or white per descriptions of that has jumped out of this and said, no, we have black and white being communicated by nature. And this is left out of this discussion because the breaching method was left out of this discussion too. And the breaching method knew that people would speak for the sciences. They would self-value roles of people that spoke for the sciences, leaving the breaching method out. And self-valuing a collusion slash S at all locations slash S that nobody wanted. But right where and how. We are fact-checking, victim predator reactions, non-reactions of syntax nature. Also because, in other words, they're making the illusion of conversations and then just totally faking them by having people take a picture of people next to each other and pretend that courts have legitimacy to be able to debate such. Even in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center Tower. Excuse me. They're one of the court's interstates used remotely at future times with vertical and horizontal live progressions relative to them needing to pretend they are integrity, as shown too, where they can't get away with it. So they are showing needs and means to pretend other anyway. This is really what was the problem with the capital treatments. Right before it was announced that there was a suit against, or he lost the suit in Fox News, it was or CNN or MSNBC. What's his name? Alex Jones. I don't know Alex Jones. But see, these are Sandy Hook families involved with wire crimes and federal evidences crimes and medical crimes and sexual crimes and medicines and drugs crimes, and the difference of that and their roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and timed use of the slash S of the difference of that intercities. So people who went to the schools I went have rules of the intelligence community that has been used remotely. And while they did that, they made other people use it. In other words, also the differences between the former FBI director and his defendant capacities in the past and to come. In other words, or relative to predicate acts with facts methods recorded. Methods, whole methods of them. And as use of location slash S. Where and how to. nature showing us to observe, like our founders told us to observe. What they actually communicate was to understand the breaching method and remote use also of the difference between the interbranch overt criminal enterprises, private ones, or criminal insidiousness nature as the country shared on and off campuses in direction. They're speaking about things like crimes while they're still predicate acts with facts methods, not just against the species volume system, the species slash S. Because again, we are showing the hyper simultaneous with appreciation, honest and proper, of why and how we are a species distinct from another species, and why and how we are one simultaneously non-distinct, and why and how we are one simultaneously, and why and how we are one simultaneously with the identity of hyper simultaneous further there. We don't have to agree about a God. Again, because we're more probable and practical that algebra was taught using yin yang and alpha and omega to teach about the difference between left to right, constant slash variable, and variable slash constant, as its identity of relationship to itself. Where it's not juxtaposed with matter, where it is juxtaposed with matter, and where diffusion from that, and as that which won't mix with it, where it does anyway, making more and more identity of value nature progression, where how nature shows us these distinct identities of the parts of itself. It shows us the parts of it, of the extent of the complete identity of all space slash existence that we can discern. Again, it comes with equally as value its complete identity of relationship to itself and the value of that. Those three values increased as value, and then matter was generated. The identity of matter and of three identities of zero was before they were relative to each other, and in demonstration of the only increasing value equally simultaneously of its identity relationship to itself, and the value of that, and of how it has a identity and value relationship to itself as all things. If we ignore its systems, for example, I forgot the connection I was going to make, but in other words, it is the hyper algorithm. It's what we all want to know and understand, but people have been using the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie. People have been taking oaths after they came through campuses that made them hide from and lie about what nature communicates, Black pupils. And so I tried to give years before these wars, so watch Judge Napolitano's YouTube channel. And he recently had a video with a Scott Ritter who reported that the world almost ended the other day. And don't forget, since the 80s, we've been told to be scared. And that's sustained. Then they tell you, then no one knows how to react to that syntax nature. Exactly the way the breaching method knew. And it keeps all responses to everything as collusion. Victims advocates and people who deal with domestic violence on a mass scale, intelligence community recorded capacity demonstrated to confirm. They know that on a mass scale they use criminally foreign influenced They have roles with uses remotely, criminally foreign influence of all natures of investigators, per use of location /s, where how they pretended any identity had freedom or liberty, or in other words, or spoke for the law or the Constitution unabridged properly. All exceptions, exception nature, or demonstration, same thing. And then you have these people arrest kids because they do what? Like, especially in the cities, especially differentially relative to things. And the difference of that, too, was is used remotely, too. These suburbs were designed before America's founders were born. Some of these homes were built. It was against the law for anyone to be found out speaking about building infrastructure or other. Per notes I learned this at Central Connecticut State University. Outside of internationally monitored conversations. Now, see, these are through systems individually grouped in together. Then and now, self-value used remotely by what is external from this and maintaining other things, others, or selves. Blamed for where and how and why. Fake sciences and fake news, to use the phrase of President Trump, which is kind because it's predicate acts with facts. It's organized crime news, but it's also the intelligence next to them. And it's also the systems with that. Medicare, Social Security, insurance, all natures of things, vaccines. Whole bunch of people tied to the name people named Perone are involved with all kinds of natures of investigations. Investigators used criminally foreign influence since before I was alive. Also, people with the name Kerr with them, and tomorrow and Cololo at corners of streets, on Church Street in Old Wethersfield, and on the Southstein Highway, like that Southstein Highway and Town Line Drive. They have roles of World Trade Center predicate acts relative to predicate acts roles they have there that are connected as collusions with ones at campuses pretended into databases and with the news too. At the same time, the courts have been stacking federal evidence as crimes and faked and changed and just completely made up audio and video transcripts into databases. Already on a mass scale, they were shown they need to hide how they say all these people are known to the police. They have collusions on a mass scale, everyone against everyone through other, even when they're helping people. There's a mass behavior racketeering. There are dozens of names tied to the same house /S involved with wire crime acts and methods with the Wethersfield Police and other police departments and their family members, retired police chiefs involved, co-defendants and family members and neighbors of co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. Various natures of federal criminals these are, since before they were caught. Thaddeus Grabowski, John LeConte, Dominic Lepriata. Even if it was made up, they have roles of predicate acts with facts, with unions too, at corners of buildings, planting evidences, as the ones leading up to the World Trade Center, even years ahead of time, in that context and sense. They have roles with all sides of locations involved. And they leak such, because what they do on a mass scale, the intelligence community pretends, and people associated with them pretend that they don't understand people online. That's all that's gobbledygook. Whatever. Because leaving out exception nature, leaving out the relativity of where and how rights to lie to people about the people around them. That's used on a mass scale, but they don't have the right to lie. The only people who have unobstructed relationships too are the people involved with medical corruption interbranch, putting fake things in those databases no one's looking into. Same ones putting it intercampuses and on and off them connected. Whole bunch of people tied to the educators of Ray Reynolds, too, are involved with medical corruption with kids with names on my street, tied to a whole bunch of people from other areas. Planting evidence is here, like with this Rob Rodriguez, rolls with a Joe DeMoro and Heather Hansen with home break-ins, with other police departments. And they brought up the name Judge Napolitano. This Ron Adams said he was at a wedding with a Judge Napolitano. I've asked Judge Napolitano to get them on paper. The Fox Connecticut News has roles with all kinds of police forms, foreign and domestic, with these same names. If there's a threat to kill one of those people and they're hiding their names or something like that, these are people involved with the World Trade Center attack through other natures of organized crime. These are people involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me. I never tried to seek out a Joe DeMoro. It was recorded. They've been planting sequence shifts, all kinds of criminally foreign influence and uses of investigators. Also recorded them saying opposite things and hiding that because they have collusions where there's uses of that as their roles increasingly interstates and internationally with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases. The laws, and these are names on all the state corrections offices too. Increasingly with military, involved with Connecticut boxing gyms, involved with body dumping spots and murders, and uses of people's names like punks, and then they don't want to have the conversation. Then people want to pretend they speak about free speech. You guys want to keep free speech, and instead you speak about it as something used to censor for the breaching method. That's also involved here. Not just the breaching method, but that's the scientific value that's replaced. Where the communications of our founders were to communicate about the fact treatment nature breaching method, the predicate acts with facts delivery system method, the criminal insidiousness nature delivery system method, and propagation method to force, trick, or hurt, persuaded, only fathomed, being and having been. Roles, self-cultivated roles. And that's so self-cultivation, referring it to it that way is necessary because it's hiding behind that. We're not supposed to forgive, and we are supposed to simultaneously because we're led by the hyper simultaneous. It is hot while cold. Not just because it wants more warmth here valued and us to contemplate why. Or it will force it from here. Lethal Hadith. And once this goes any longer, Earth's whole value will go through us. See, but the rest of Earth had no criminal foreign influences. It's more probable and practical to theorize, let alone to convict, that they would then be the species that would be, more like our own. And we would end up being like the negative value nature progressions of species, where nature will continue to demonstrate to where it could communicate, where in other words, where it's unobstructed. Its system also positive unto itself, but not positive as criminal insidiousness nature. Nature itself, so as if you entertain the laws that were entertained by colonialism, at colonial times, at early states times, or now, nature will demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Means out of nowhere, we can make a better than free and afford it like nothing vacation system, which in other words, we can embrace the species body that like in New York City, where there's people stacking. Hartford is a suburban / urban designed by this breaching method more so than any modern country. Like Russia and America still have suburbs. Matter of fact, that looked almost exactly alike, and they're in that progression as that which was forced with slavery entrenched distinctly northern colonies and southern. What really got us into the world wars? See, everyone wants to use their knowledge about it knowledge of good and evil, to hide what God is, to hide from and hurt, and sense for the breaching method if someone used short words right. What got us into the world war is the same thing got us into the Civil War, which was some ways more than anything else the breaching method /S. In some ways more than anything else, it was the plan of James Madison and the founders behind him. That which George Washington agreed to help. And so became the same. The first president / general / chief. And the Native Americans were fighting with the Native Americans because the Constitution is abridged. Vaccine. The species body will be simultaneously held together and simultaneously held apart by its system. As long as we stay systems appreciating other, it will demonstrate. And with those demonstrations comes means to discern. Least of hadiths, more probably having been defined by the ancients as a negative identity of relationship to itself, following the science of appreciation of its identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that, inseparable from all parts of every subject individually grouped and together, and how those are three volumes that are simultaneously bound at each part of that. Like, in other words, those are three identities of possession over the finite details of something made up, or like a republic, over its group details, and over the simultaneous details as the hypersimultaneous. As long as that is let lead the republic, it is led by what is not made up. And more it becomes a real gift. It becomes a real positive piece of evolution that is not a criminal insidiousness nature of evolution. Evolution's fruits, gifts, and means out of nowhere. Some ways especially come only through where and how we are, quality as fact, shape, and nature. Black pupils. It is time. Someone please get Fox Connecticut News or Fox News or CNN. CNN also on off Central Connecticut State University through administrations. The difference between political parties is recorded also with delusions in the minds of the voices that have roles also on off Wethersfield town offices and the community center involved with this and next in spots next to it, including with Whiting Forensics increasingly involved with predicate acts and various natures of organized crime and uses of body dumping spots and the names next to them and their uses of the reported killer as a serial killer and their uses of the reported killed, like the girl dragged to her death, and like Wethersfield police involvements with FBI and other police forms, and people with a name Mike Violet, and their mother works with the intelligence at UConn, involved with Harper, Connecticut, and their roles with Los Solitos and Italian unmarked police forms, but also actual criminal enterprises. They have foreign and domestic medical families. They all run and like fire departments, families, and campuses, families. They run into high life progressions for a phenomenon where they make arrays of people speak fake things, make fake conversations. And they also put fake in those fake conversations. They present, people say everyone's evil. They put people using fake uses of drugs. In other words, they have all kinds of scams with the lawyers too. Originally, still clearer than day, black people. They have more scams with people involved with wire crimes, falsified police reports, with the Wethersfield Police Department, same ones involved with other police departments, same ones involved with criminal enterprises, not personal, because there were also timed collusions with other countries, including Pakistani families and Afghanistan families, including at those corners of streets involved. As the people between campuses, but there's differences, rackets. They're using all rights to lie to what they don't. Their use of location /s, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. This breaching method new could measure and maintain. Suits and ties counters all exceptions, blaming as rules with other things, others ourselves. Blame for things it caused, like slavery, even though our founders communicated that. So in other words, people self-value roles with them, stealing the identities of our founders. And then they want to pretend they could speak about something as critical as identity theft against people based on the pigment of their skin, and rolls with it. Use /s of it because it has nothing to do with that. Why and how A through Z are fakes, and they jump into our legal conversations. We would have long revealed predicate acts with facts roles. Needs and natures are the only people allowed to speak for things like crimes. And that in other words, because a certain type of victim /hyper victim at the same time with overt criminal enterprises, private ones with their kids and family members need to use words like adults, immaturity, drugs, criminally foreign influence. They need to blame on other things, others themselves, the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and their actually recorded natures, which are used to show themselves since they were kids. They had roles self-value with predicate acts with facts that were used remotely, exactly the way the hyperforeign knew it would. As timed collusions with a whole bunch of other countries speaking about things like crimes together, including Russians and Americans. They have roles with psychiatry, while their tactically delusions are all kinds of natures of fake. They have them tied to prisons, corrections offices, judicial offices, all sides of criminal and civil cases, in the courts, putting fake things at the same time with the news. Then they have to pretend to keep they have integrity anyway. This breaching method uses that theater as criminal insidiousness nature /hyper criminal insidiousness nature, and rolls with it. This breaching method knew that any person who's real at locations A through Z, at countries A through Z, they're gonna sense. It's they're gonna sense, because now they have at A through Z, they have people who spoke for the law. They can't speak for the law. Predicate acts with facts, methods, needs, and natures. Forgiveness is to pay attention to this breaching method that is clearer than day upon the suburbs, let alone New York City, where we have World Trade Center predicate acts I brought up, like WFSBs, and their rules communicating, leaking things like this. They have digital crimes with the police forms. Whiting forensics and state police are increasingly involved with WFSB, with foreign and domestic military, with courts, family members, a whole bunch of people along Route 3 with planting evidences off campuses as collusions with people that did it on campuses and just had it done for them. That's why we can't get anyone to paper, because you're going to see that also their uses of those tricks with people in other classes involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against people they don't even know, fake motivations, increasingly involved with various natures of federal criminals before they got caught, because there's recorded conscious uses of distinct natures of organized crime juxtaposed at our campuses. Black pupils. Fear the subject treatments. Heard yet each. Now one must reach. CT is cherry tree, not oak nor peach. Must be.